Welcome to Open Your Reality. You know, I haven't made a video on Tom Campbell's MBT for a while, so I thought it the perfect time to do one. And in particular, I want to focus on the 5 most controversial questions asked in MBT. And if you don't know, MBT is an acronym for My Big Theory of Everything, which was devised by Tom Campbell and written about in a set of trilogy books with the same name. I think you'll find this video to be super interesting, and it may even provide you with some long-sought answers. If it does, please consider giving it a like. Thank you. So, here we go. The first question is a dire one, on the topic of taking your own life. Now we're jumping right into the deep end here. I've heard many ask Tom before, what happens to those people who take their own life? Do they lose consciousness forever? Do they experience fire and brimstone for all eternity? Or do they get another chance at life? Alright, those people who choose to end their incarnation go to the same place as we all go, says Tom. Except their integration back into the afterlife reality is much more gradual due to the traumatic way in which their life ended. Many times these people will need to spend time alone with their guide or guides to deal with their pain. Tom says most people take their life because their decision space is so narrow they can't see any other way out of their situation. Of course, for some, they have biological issues that makes them see everything in a very negative way, and things can be different for those people. But overall, taking your life is not a good option, as you've cut short a valuable opportunity only to start over from where you left off. It's definitely a high entropy choice that not only hurts your friends and family, but the whole system as well. And I'm talking about the LCS, or larger consciousness system, for those that don't know. Now, Tom says that future success for one who has taken their life will be more difficult to achieve in future lifetimes. It also becomes easier to take your life again in future incarnations. So think about that before you do. Furthermore, failure to complete your mission by living your life out to the end of its course can potentially cause those who help and plan your mission to have doubt in you. In this way, they may question whether you are sufficiently evolved to take on another challenging humanoid role in a physical matter reality. In this regard, it's prudent not to take your life, as you may just return in your next incarnation as a lower life form, like an Australian bare-nosed wombat. So don't do it. The second most controversial question often asked of Tom is, do very evil people go to that place down south? You know, that place with brimstone and fire? The name of Hitler is often brought up when asking this question. Tom's surprising answer is that there is no such place as heaven and no place with fire and brimstone either. There are only other various physical matter realities, like our own, and non-physical matter realities, which are places we would perceive like the afterlife, or other realities that we may experience like in the out-of-body state. It is true, there are negative entities in some of these realities, just as we have here, but there is no one place where all the bad people go. In actuality, the definition of good and bad is quite subjective anyway. Tom says it's not so much the action that decides whether it's a low entropy choice or not, meaning good or bad, but the intent behind it. For example, if you traveled back in time to take the life of Hitler just as he was rising to power, would you be considered a terrible person and criminal? To most German people in the 1930s, you would be. But for everyone that knows what Hitler went on to do, you'd probably be considered a savior. Tom says we point out people like Hitler, Stalin, and Mao Zedong because they caused millions upon millions to suffer and perish. This was because they were people who somehow got into a position of power. But there are plenty of other people in the world who would have acted in the same way if they were in the same position. But they just never achieved any power at all. This entire life we live, guys, is just a simulation. And the larger consciousness system, thankfully, is very forgiving and understanding of our errors. Ultimately, the goal is to lower our entropy and the entire system by making more loving and compassionate choices each successive lifetime, and hopefully each successive year that we're here now. People that live very high entropy lifetimes, like Hitler, probably spend a lot of time with their guides in the afterlife before attempting another incarnation. It's very similar to therapy here, but there is no punishment that Hitler had to endure other than simply de-evolving. Yes, he likely had to experience karma in his future incarnations to balance out the negativity he brought upon humanity, and if you think of that as fire and brimstone, then so be it. That's his fire and brimstone. And he could have potentially been demoted to an animal or some other lesser evolved physical matter reality for his next lifetime. We don't know, but those are all possibilities. But there is one other possibility that Tom sometimes gets asked about, and that brings us into question 3. Is it possible to be completely deleted from the simulation if you continually make bad choices? What if someone keeps getting the chance to play a human character and makes horrendous choices lifetime after lifetime? Then what? Tom says it is possible for the LCS to delete that ICU or individuated unit of consciousness. If you didn't know, an ICU is equivalent to our higher self. You can also think of it as our soul, as that may be the easiest way to look at it. If an ICU continually de-evolves, the LCS can simply remove or delete it from the simulation. After all, there is no law or rule saying it can't happen, and the LCS's overall goal is to reduce entropy. If an ICU is not helping at all, it only makes sense to delete it. But Tom said this only happens in the rarest of circumstances. He said if there's any possibility for good in that ICU, then deletion will not happen. For those listening now and think they've made many bad choices in life, I wouldn't worry about being deleted. You'd literally have to be making the worst choices lifetime after lifetime, and still, there would be a very small chance you'd be wiped from the system. Thankfully, all of us are programmed with the desire to succeed and lower our entropy. You can see this if you've ever seen quiet one-on-one interviews with even the most destructive people. They seem to be intelligent and understand good and bad, wrong and right. But their ego and emotions often cause them to act in high entropy ways, and they cannot control it. You see, it's not so much what you know, but what you do and what you use when you're embroiled in the game. Now, one last point on deletion. If you were to be deleted, you would never even know about it. Your ICU would be instantly cleared from the server, and you would never be aware. It would be like you never even existed in the first place. And now we're on to the 4th question, which is, do we reunite with our loved ones in the afterlife? So many people want to know the answer to this question. The answer, though, may surprise you and be a bit hard to take. Tom says that once a loved one passes on, they generally move into the afterlife and soon after take on another incarnation because that's just what we do. However, it is common for many people to see their deceased loved ones when arriving in the afterworld. So how is that? Now here's the difficult part to hear. Tom says those are not actually our loved ones, but a fabrication of them that the LCS creates to soothe the transition of the death process. I made a video early on in my channel talking all about this, in which Tom referred to meeting the vaulted Uncle Fred in the afterlife. Now some of you may remember that video. Uncle Fred may appear exactly as we remember him and know everything about our relationship with him, but it's not truly Uncle Fred. Tom says it's just information that the LCS is using from its database to convey the likeness of him. And we can talk with him, we can touch him, and even reminisce about all the old times we spent. But this Uncle Fred does not have free will, and will not exist after he leaves our presence. And actually, our loved ones are only around for 10 to 15 minutes to greet us in the afterworld before departing and saying goodbye. And often, that's all the time we need to start acclimating back into the afterworld. Here's something to think about, guys. Most of us have had at least 30 to 40 lifetimes lived already. Let's suppose you lived 40 previous incarnations. Just imagine how many wives, husbands, children, friends, and relatives you could have amassed in those 40 incarnations. The number could easily be over 500 people. Do you see where I'm going with this? So according to the work of Dr. Michael Newton and others like him, most souls belong to a soul group consisting of, on average, just 15 souls. And these are typically the only beings you consistently see from lifetime to lifetime, besides your guides. The fifth and final most controversial question is about the subject of enlightenment. A lot of people ask Tom, will there ever come a time when I reach enlightenment and I'm done with all this? Tom surprises us yet again when he says no, conclusively no. In his theory of MBT, there is no such thing as enlightenment. We just keep going on and on like a little spiritual energizer bunny. I know that sounds horrible for some people to hear, but it's actually not so bad. Once we evolve to higher and higher levels of love, our reality gets noticeably better. And if we ever reach a point where we feel we've learned almost all we could, then we would simply become guides and teachers for all those still struggling. And God knows there are millions and billions of people struggling. This reminds me of the Law of One teaching and Buddhism at the same time. In the Law of One, fourth density consciousness is supposedly 100 times more harmonious than our present day third density existence. Now, I imagine as we evolve inside the LCS, we are rewarded with more loving and cooperative PMRs to play in. Tom hints of this when he says our current Earth reality is merely a kindergarten in comparison to all the other possible PMRs that exist. And in Buddhism, the Buddha vowed not to fade into the void as an enlightened being until all souls can go with him. How nice. In MBT, there is no point at which we graduate and return to the source. That's just for the Matrix. You see, we just keep trucking on, and I would bet the Buddha is still out there helping all his sannyasins. In MBT, once a soul is created and continues to evolve, it never ceases to be conscious. This concept took me a while to accept, as I had believed that the final evolution of a soul was simply to meld back with the source of all creation, as the Law of One states, and so many of the other gurus have talked about, such as Osho, who I've read through the years and always talked about enlightenment. But then again, perhaps this is why I resonate so strongly with MBT, because it goes against the grain of concepts that have been talked and written about for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. If you enjoyed this video and want to support my work, you can do so at patreon.com/openyourreality. There is also a one-time PayPal button in the description if you prefer. Anything, and I mean anything, even $1, you can donate helps. Thanks to all the patrons and the people who supported me in June. I sincerely appreciate everyone's help. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe to be notified of future videos like this. Alright guys, that's it for today. I'll see you in the next one, which should be out soon.
Give me a sign, something that shines. Take me out of space and time. It's more than a dream. Now I'm the wind, feel it around me.